2, 1. Welcome, members of Art of Healthy Authentic Marriages group. I was going to say relationships, but we changed the name to marriages. I am pleased to be here again today for our Thursday topic of the week with Kelly and Ned Vandiver, coaches at the 5 to 1 Couples Cure. And today we're going to talk about a really great topic, which is not enough sex, not enough intimacy in the marriage. Now, this comes up a lot. We hear this from both men and women equally. But pleased to be here again today for our Thursday topic of the week. I think you have to mute your computer there. I heard my echo there. There's like not enough passion in the relationship where both people feel like they're not really having that much sex or they're not really feeling any desire for each other. And they're fine with it, but they think maybe they shouldn't be fine with it and they're worried about it. It could show up as one person really wants more intimacy, wants more sex, the other person's not interested. That causes a whole host of problems. Or it can show up as, it's an inability. Like, we just don't know how to get past it. We're not having sex. We're not feeling close and intimate in that way. We both find it painful, and we both just don't know how to break out of this pattern that we're in. There could be physiological problems. There could be emotional issues behind it. Basically, the whole shebang is what we're going to talk about today, and how this shows up in different ways. Because this is something that, we hear a lot in the line of work that we're in. So you might be in a relationship where you're feeling rejected. This is one of the biggest ways I think that this shows up, is that we talk to somebody who's feeling like, why isn't my spouse wanting more? Is that a problem? Is this normal? And questioning how often is considered normal and when should I be worried, right? Haven't you guys found this to be true? It really triggers a lot of insecurity and really questioning what is right and what is the line for what's normal and what's not normal. Yeah,
definitely. And one of the ways that I noticed that it shows up for a lot of the people we're on the phone with is that they begin to withdraw from their partners, or their partners begin to withdraw from one another. For example, you may have company coming over. All right. And it may be predominantly your friends that you're inviting over, and your spouse or, significant other may choose to, make themselves scarce, So, I mean, just things like that where, it begins to show up in ways that affect the dynamic between the two of you a lot of the time. Another case may be where, if, certain conversations, somebody may want to talk about something, and a husband may go, hey, well, I have lawn work to do, and those are the types of things that begin to how it begins to show up within that dynamic also. So it becomes a huge problem over time.
Yeah. Withdrawal is a huge one, and that I see, and it's a big losing strategy, because look, guys, like, if you don't address what is holding you back mentally, like just in relationship with yourself, in relationship in your marriage, if you don't address what's holding you back, you can never execute and fix it, right? Like, you can't. When you're withdrawing, you can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it just is a cycle, right? Because if you're withdrawing and the other person feels rejected or hurt or insecure or mistrustful, it just perpetuates, and they want to pull away from you, or they might lean back into you and pull on you. It might create a cycle of like, one person is really trying to pull the person in, and that person is putting up more walls as a result.
Yeah.
Or there's just this deep divide, and neither person wants to even broach the topic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really uncomfortable. It gets to the point where, how do we bring this up? I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
That comes up a lot too, especially people who've been married for a really long time.
Yeah.
And they've moved into like best friend mode, or they're, they're best friends, they're roommates.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that leads us to, one of the other huge problems that it begins to create. Like you said, they either have a hard time talking about the problem, or there's so much resentment that builds that they don't even want to talk about the problem. It's just a problem to bring up the problem, And so that's another way that begins to show up. And, then you're dealing with rejection, you're dealing with anger. And, oftentimes it can lead to abandonment, Somebody has to take a break from the other person. We hear that a lot when we're talking to people. So
Yeah, can't do this.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think lack of intimacy, well, it causes more problems. We're going to get into sort of the causes and some of the solutions in just a minute. But right now, just in terms of looking at what happens when it continues for too long, when it's not addressed. And if two people are happy with their lack of intimacy, there's no problem for either of you, then it's fine, right? It's not a problem if it's not a problem.
Right.
But if it's a problem for one of you, it's a problem for the whole relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
Most times, even if it on the surface it seems like it's not a problem, there's a whole wealth of intimacy that is being missed out on when you're not. And it's not just about sex. Sex is like a symptom of that, right? But when people are not able to be intimate physically, there's a whole level of emotional intimacy that you're missing out on as well. So there's some problems that you want to, there's red flags that you want to look out for. One is that you become more vulnerable to affairs, right? Either emotionally, if you feel like you're not getting the connection from sex or the validation, or you're not feeling close to your partner, and you're feeling like rejected, that it's going to be very tempting to get attention outside of the relationship, even if it's just a friend at work or something.
Yeah.
If you feel like somebody might be interested in you.
Yeah.
It's going to be, because we all have that need for connection.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
And go ahead, Monika.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say also to stack on that and to expand on that just a little bit in terms of, the vulnerability to affairs, emotional affairs, sexual affairs, infidelity in general. If you're not experiencing that deep connection at home, you may not even be looking for it outside the home, but what you're looking for, you will find. That is how that works. And if you're not finding it at home, you're automatically going to be magnetizing it to yourself because you want it so badly. And so that really is why how we open ourselves up to infidelities in relationship. If we're not really investing the time, the energy, our focus on, okay, what are the issues we're having at home, and working through those and solving them, you're never going to have that deep connection, and you're automatically going to be putting those feelers out there outside the home.
Yeah. Yeah. Which becomes a huge problem. That's a huge problem in your relationship,
Yeah. That works both ways.
Yeah. Definitely.
The other thing that shows up too is just when you're not intimate with each other, there's a lack of attunement with each other. You're not as connected. You're less likely to actually talk about feelings and emotions and to feel like a real type of transparent communication.
Yeah.
And this is why the whole concept of pillow talk is so powerful and so true, right? Is that cliche. After people have been intimate, it's easier to talk about stuff.
Right.
And it's easier you're feeling open and you're feeling more able to share, and you're with each other. You're very present with each other, and everything comes up afterwards, right? So when you're not having that intimacy, there's a whole level of emotional connection that you're missing out on.
Yeah.
That I think people might not even notice they're missing right away.
Yep.
And it can start off as just feeling like, things are fine. It's kind of boring. There's no desire, but it's okay. We have a good partnership. We're roommates, but aside from the sex thing, everything else is fine, right? I almost see that as a danger zone a little bit too.
That is a total red zone. That means right there, the no desire part, right? It's not a matter of if, but when. You will be divorced. That's how that works.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time.
Right, because you're just staying on the surface then without that desire. Everything feels a little bit boring, a little bit neutral, right? And then
I mean, just showing up with your partner as a roommate is definitely not the way to go. I mean, and it just the tired, boring. So many people talk about, the spark that is lost as a result of, that lack of connection, the thing that, really fires the relationship. And like Kelly has said, oftentimes what you're not getting at home, you're still seeking it. And oftentimes it will show up in other places. And if it's outside the home, that's going to create a huge problem for you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Another one, and this is a huge one, in terms of the desire. And I see this all the time, every single day. A huge cause of, and we may, dive into this more later in the conversation, but I just wanted to make mention that the lack of desire these days, a lot of times, is caused because of basically lack of polarity in the relationship, lack of polarity, the male and female essence, the masculine and the feminine essence, and that strong, the man being really strong in his masculine, the woman being really strong in her feminine essence. And what we find these days is that a lot of women are in their masculine energy. They're operating their lives from that stressed out place of doing everything for everyone else except for themselves. And that makes them a good woman. And it's all BS. It's all cultural. We've been cultured to be this way, but that is one of the biggest causes of the lack of feminine masculine polarity in a relationship, is a woman being too much in her masculine.
Yeah. And I can definitely tell you, as a man, when you're, as a man who's trying to match up with a woman who is in that place, that masculine part of herself, it definitely is less desirous for me as a man to be with a woman like that, to be with her, because I can't fully be myself if I'm matching up with somebody whose energy is the same as mine. We're almost.
There's not going to be a magnetism. It just, they cancel each other out in a sense. And so there's just no charge there.
Right.
And
exactly.
Also, a woman who is in her masculine and stays there for too long, and I know because I've been one of those women, a woman who stays in her masculine is overwhelmed. She's exhausted. She's a lot of times angry and mean and doesn't even understand why, right? And so when you've got that angry charge and you're in your masculine, anger is not an inviting energy, right? It will repel everything and everyone away from you. So, that's another problem that we see show up.
And I think it's important to say too that, all of us have both in us. We all have masculine and feminine within us.
Yeah.
And the key really is about having the right balance. And it's really about finding polarity in the relationship. And that's for true, not just with desire. But for the topic of today, that's what we're talking about. But in general, that concept of polarity is a really useful concept in balancing out all kinds of problems. But I think especially with intimacy, and if you're really anxious and you're really in a tightly wound, sort of stressed out place, you're not able to even think about intimacy because it requires softness. It requires a certain amount of receptive.
Exactly. Yeah.
Receiving.
Yes, receiving somebody doing things for you, somebody receiving even just like acts of kindness. A lot of women in general who are used to doing things for other people, and mothers used to just get, here, you can eat my food, here's my stuff for you, giving, that to just be receiving and being on the receiving end almost feels selfish, or there can be fear around that.
Yeah.
Be fear around that.
Yeah.
But I think that the main point we're just trying to make is that when you go too long that way, you end up perpetuating the pattern, and then it's really hard to break out of that. Another pattern that comes up is fighting, rehashing, blaming. Obviously, if one person feels like they want to be intimate and the other person doesn't, that can cause fights, that can cause arguments. It's always on your terms is something that always comes up. Well, I want more emotional connection before I can be intimate, is what one person might say. And the other person might say, well, I need more intimacy. I need to feel desired before I feel safe enough to be able to be emotionally intimate. And it becomes, and then, you get into an argument or a power struggle. That comes up a lot too, that power struggle around sex and what that means. And why should I give you what you want if I'm not getting what I want?
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a really big way that shows up. And then also just the pain of like like feeling rejected or maybe distrustful or feeling like, are they looking outside or is there something wrong with me?
Right. Yeah. It begins to create, it begins to create a host of issues within yourself. You know, when you start questioning yourself about, how the person is viewing you, how you're showing up, and you begin to, oftentimes become distrustful of yourself, which creates a huge issue. Because oftentimes, because we don't have the tools to actually deal with that, we begin to deflect that onto our partner,
Yes, right. And that's such a good point, too, because when those insecurities get triggered and people start to wonder, like, is it something I'm doing wrong? It just makes it so much worse because then they start thinking about, oh, I should be doing it differently. And then it's not from an authentic place.
Exactly.
And then it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be performing in a certain way to be sexy, but then it's not really, that's not about intimacy then.
Right. Exactly. Right.
And it's not really genuine and it ends up falling flat. And then people get even more self-doubt and it's a horrible cycle. So what we want to help you guys with today is if you recognize yourself in any of these dynamics that we're talking about, the good news is you can break out of this. It's sort of like, it feels hard because you're in a rut, right? And it takes a little bit of energy and momentum and a little bit of leaving your comfort zone to break out of that. But once you break out of that, it opens the floodgates. The desire comes back, the ease comes back, the connection comes back, and everything else is flowing. So it's, really part of that whole saying, the better it gets, the better it gets.
Yeah.
So what's the solution? What is it that we can do? What can we do? This is the question we want to answer for you guys today. And we have 5 things that we want to share with you today that can help you with getting more intimacy in your relationship, starting today, hopefully. So Kelly, why don't you start with the number 1? What is the number 1 solution?
The number 1 solution is definitely busting the myth that you have a sex problem, because lack of sex and intimacy in your relationship, or no sex in your relationship, is not a cause. It is a symptom of a much deeper problem, or a symptom of much deeper problems. Usually there are a few things going on within the dynamic of the relationship. Sometimes it's something going on with one or both people internally to themselves in the relationship. And it's like a conglomeration of all of that. But lack of sex is not the problem itself. It is really just a symptom of some much deeper stuff going on.
Yeah. Right. Barring any physical issues, there are certain cases where there's physical issues that are preventing that. But really, even then, in the majority of the cases, it's usually there's something else going on, and it's not something that's irreversible.
Yeah.
Right.
So that brings a barrier. There's things that can be done, whereas most people might just stop there and be like, oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the myth is that if you're not having enough sex, it's because of you need to know more about sex, or I need to find out, more about sex, and I have to do more to create sex. I have to be sexier, when that's not really it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So totally. What is it about then?
Say that one more time. It cut out.
So what's it about then? What would you say? Like, let's give an example of what it might be about if it's not about sex. If for those that are listening, that it might be like, well, of course it's about sex. She doesn't want to have sex as much as I do, or he doesn't want to have sex as much as I do, and that's just a libido problem. And so some people just have a higher libido than others.
Right.
How do we address that?
Well, I mean, really, the deeper issues are really all the things that we just discussed previous to this.
Mm-hmm. Well, you feel like you're not safe emotionally, right?
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
If you don't have the communication to be able to talk about what you want, like, I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were about to say something, Ned, but I was just thinking of
No, go ahead.
Somebody that I was talking to, part of the problem was she didn't really enjoy the way they were doing it, but she didn't want to say that. And so it wasn't that fun for her. And so she was kind of resisting it. And so then he felt like she didn't want sex. That wasn't true. She did, but she wanted to do different things. She wanted to try different things. She felt like she had to go along with the way he wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And the lack of communication around that was really the
Right.
because actually, if she could talk to him and say, hey, let's do this, and that was cool, and they had good communication, they both actually had more of a match libido, but he was walking away feeling like she doesn't want me, and that wasn't the case.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're just not, a lot of times that's happening. They're avoiding the conversation because they don't have the skills to communicate with one another. So yeah.
Especially if you were raised in a family where people don't talk about it.
Right.
Exactly.
It's in most families.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing too that you can do is to really do in the inner work, staying in your lane and looking at your own issues that you've never dealt with or healed from your childhood. So if you've got some trauma, if you've got some wounding, if there's been some deep rejection, then a lot of times intimacy is going to be really threatening. Or it can be, some people feel like I'll get swept up, I'll lose myself if I get too close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So yeah.
yeah,
Totally.
trauma
So
back.
with that is in the staying in your lane part. And this is really where, you know, you want to start breaking down, you know, and looking at yourself, pausing when you're in these, and when you're in a relationship that really is in crisis, right? And you're stuck in these patterns, in these entrenched patterns, and you're arguing and you're fighting constantly and you don't feel the love anymore. And you know that you need something different and you need to do something different. That where you start is to stay in your lane, pause, and really go inward, get introspective, and really begin to ask yourself, how have I been showing up in my marriage? Like, how have I been showing up? And get really curious as to how you've been showing up. And then the next part is, after you've really taken inventory, is really owning fully yourself, how you've been showing up. Own it fully. Be able to spell it out in black and white to yourself, to your partner, and own it. Own how you've been showing up. And then the next piece is take radical responsibility for your own growth. You know, be responsible for that. Get the support that you need. Hire a therapist, hire the mentor, hire the coach who has done this work, who has gotten to the other side of being in these really sad places and stuck in these patterns.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it on your own. And if you could have done it on your own, you would have already done it on your own. If you could have figured it out, you would have already, but guess what? You haven't. And so you have to get the support and the help that you need in order to heal what needs to be healed, so that you can get over the hump of dysfunction and get to the other side of it and be in a really happy, healthy, sensual, sexual marriage again. Yeah. And there are steps to it, but you can't do it alone. And I know that. Monika knows that. Ned knows that, because we didn't do it alone. You know?
No. And we still continue to do it. You have to continue to do this.
It's a freaking journey.
Yeah.
And it's a lifelong journey. And the growth can never stop, because when you stop growing, you're dying. And that is huge for your marriage. You always need to be investing in your marriage. Always. Always.
That's right. And especially you're in the danger zone if you're stagnating. Now, if you're doing some inner work and you're not at the point of sex yet, that's fine, because there's movement, right?
Right.
The main thing is if you're knowing where you're going and you're doing the inner work and there's some kind of transformation happening underneath, you can get there. Once you've done that inner work and you can share yourself transparently and you can really own your part, stay in your lane, not be projecting onto your partner, and show up with that self-love that lays the foundation for healthy intimacy. You don't have to be at the point where you're actually having the best sex of your life right this second to know that you're on the right path.
Right.
The main thing is you need to be moving and having some shifting. It's
Right.
stagnation that you really want to avoid. It's you're
Right.
not staying in that spot of like, well, I just don't know what to do. This is just how it is, and keep playing that same argument over and over again, or that same cycle of resentment over and over again.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you guys want support from us, or if you want to explore this further, or maybe you've already gotten some help and it didn't work for you, you're welcome to book a call with us. I will put the link below as usual. This call is for people that are at a stage of change where they're really ready to prioritize their relationship and make some radical changes for the sake of breaking out of patterns that are so difficult to break out of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, guys, this stuff, to get to the other side of this, it requires a skill set. And that's the good news, because once you learn it, you can get to the other side of it.
Yeah.
And it's doable for anyone. And you can't learn this stuff by osmosis. It doesn't just magically appear in our brain. You have to learn this stuff in order to implement it in your life, in your everyday life, in order to embody it. Because once there's the embodiment, it's always within you. And totally book a call if you have tried to fix this on your own, if you've gotten counseling and it hasn't worked before. This is what we specialize in. This is what we do every single day. And all three of us have gotten over our own challenges in our own areas.
And I challenge, the people out there who have this problem, who've been looking at it every day, day in and day out, month after month, year after year. I challenge them, you to actually step outside of your comfort zone, actually stand up for yourself and stand up for your marriage and affect change, because you can, have the relationship that you want, and so there's so many people who are just frozen around fear, around moving, and you have to start taking action for something different to take place.
Exactly.
It's just necessary. So I just really encourage people to, if you are in the place and space like this and you identify with anything we're talking about, jump on a call with us. Yeah. This is what we do,
Yeah. And if we can't help you, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The main thing is that you want to take a stand, and you don't want to settle. If you know it can be better and you feel like you're just settling, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
No.
And look, you don't want to wait till it's too late, because I see that a lot.
Yeah.
Where people have just waited, and someone got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they're gone. You know?
Right.
I see it every single day. So, do this for yourself. Do this for your kids. Do it for your marriage. Do it for the betterment of your life. And if we can help you with the deep root problems that you have, we'll let you know. And if we can't, we will send you
point you in the right direction.
Yeah, in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you have any questions whatsoever and you just want to type it in the comments below, we always go back through those to answer those. If we weren't able to, it looks like we did get some comments while we were talking, and we will go back and circle back. So sorry if we missed it live, but we'll make sure to answer any questions that you have later today. And thanks for joining, whether you came live or listening later. And I look forward to talking to you guys again next week when we tackle another topic on Thursday. Thanks for joining today, and have a good rest of the day.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.